Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So, what's on tap for today? Where we're continuing our series on the debate between Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks and Ben Shapiro from the Daily Wire. It is part 7 of this debate, and the question that's asked is capitalism versus socialism. Why is capitalism given such disdain within our educational system, but the same thing can't be said for socialism or communism? We're going to get to all of that in the next few seconds, but if it's your first time here, you haven't done so already, folks, subscribe to the channel. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. Like, share, and follow us. Hit that notification bell. Comment below. Let us know what you think. We're coming up, and we're going to show you part 7 of the debate between Ana and Ben. Let's go to that right now.
Yes.
Ben, let me ask you another question. Our organization is one that on a daily basis supports whatever you want to call it, the free market system of economic choice. It was disturbing to me, and I think to our organization, when the National Education Association looked at a resolution, I believe it passed one of their committees, that called the free market system one of oppression, but didn't call out other totalitarian regimes.
They never do.
What does it say when our educators don't seem to believe in the free market system?
Well, I mean, obviously, I love this question. So I will say that the National Education Association is a very far left group, and so it's not a particular surprise that they're characterizing freedom of the market in that particular way. It also goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about what sort of control parents should have over the education of their own children. There's a reason I send my kids to private school. The notion that capitalism is a system of unfreedom, while government, largesse, is a system of freedom, ignores the fact that somebody actually has to pay the bills. It also ignores the fact that all growth, not some, all growth that has ever happened is a result of capitalism, meaning it is the result of free market transactions in which people consent to services and goods from other people, in which people innovate and make new products. There's a reason that we're not still riding horses and buggies around, and that is because of innovation. It's because of incentive structures. It's because people get to keep the fruit of their own labor and then use those fruits of their own labor in order to invest in things. The true growth in the American economy was never just a question of dollars and cents. It was what you got for those dollars and cents. All of that is driven by entrepreneurs who are willing to take risk. And when you disincentivize risk, you end up disincentivizing people from taking those risks. As we become a much more wage-based society, and that has happened for a large segment of the population, that means that you are incentivizing people to not take those risks. And countries that don't have people taking those risks end up being countries that economically stagnate.
Yeah.
Concise, precise once again. This whole notion that capitalism is evil and that if one person, gains, another person loses is just absolutely, completely false. Let me give you an example. I'll just give it, let's say there's 10 people in a room, all right? And everybody is given $10. Right, so everybody's got $10. Now let's say I go and make something or write a book or make an invention of some kind, and I sell it for, let's say, $2 to everybody, all right? So I've sold it for $2 to everybody. 9 people have bought it. That means that's $18 that come to me. Now, I use my $10, let's say, to invest in something, but let's say that I had some other money besides that $10. So I'm just for the sake, I've now got $28. Everybody else has got $8. Well, the way that leftist and progressive thinks is there's something wrong with me. I did something evil because I invented something. I did something to make life better. I stole. This wasn't a give and take type of situation. It wasn't reciprocal. I took advantage of them. And that's just absolutely ridiculous, stupid, idiotic, moronic, retarded, what I call people who simmer, S-I-M-R. But that's what they're going to tell you, that inherently I did something wrong. I risked. I had to put forth blood, sweat, equity, and tears, whatever that was, into making this object or making something or producing something. And they didn't get poorer. Those people got better. Yes, they have less money, but now they can go out and do something, and hopefully they can invest or they can decide to do the same thing. That's basically what the difference between capitalism. You are never going to have equal outcomes in capitalism. There are always people that are going to be at the very top and there's going to be people at the very bottom. Social safety nets, I'm all for that. But the people in the middle, they're the ones that have to, go up and down that ladder of economics and use their experience, use their education, use whatever means necessary to better themselves to get that better job position in terms of wages or salary. Let's hear Anna's response to this.
So those are the ideas that actually, funny enough, have been repeated over and over again in our education system. The idea that, children or students in this country are taught that capitalism is evil is new to me, because I certainly did not get that type of education. Quite the opposite.
Well, Anna, you're young. You're still relatively young. All right, we're all still relatively young. I didn't hear that thing when I was growing up in school and going to middle school, and elementary school, middle school, junior high, high school. Even in college, I didn't hear that as much in terms of where capitalism was just looked down upon, and socialism, communism, Marxism were the ones that were, everything is just so perfect about their system, or they just didn't do it right. We could do it a whole lot better. So when Anna's talking about, years ago, yeah, absolutely, it wasn't that talked about in the elementary and high school levels or whatever. I'm certainly sure it was being taught about at some of these, obviously, woke and elite, universities on the East and West Coast or whatever. But I think that's kind of disingenuous for Anna to equate, hey, just because I didn't hear about it doesn't mean it wasn't being talked about.
Fact. Freedom is an interesting way of framing it, because the fact of the matter is, if you are financially stable, if you are, in the top 10% of this country, for instance, you probably feel incredibly free. You have options, endless options available to you. You probably have a nice nest egg. You have a little bit of that economic freedom. But, there are two different...
I just have to stop. So what if you're in the top 10% or top 20 or top 1%? Why are you trying to imply, under the table that there's something wrong with that? As we said before, there's never going to be in a society equal outcomes of opportunity. You want to have equal opportunity, but the outcomes are never going to be the same. You're always going to have people up and down on that economic, ladder. Some at the bottom, some in the middle, some at the top, some at the very top. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And to basically use this subterfuge to say, 10% of you, if you have freedom to do anything that you want, you made your money. Hey, you probably, spent the time in education, spent the time gaining experience, spent the time in jobs and whatever to get to that position.
Different things at play. Number one, when you look at what is incentivized under capitalism, it's actually led to a lot of our own civil liberties being violated. For instance, data collection that takes place on a regular basis without our own knowledge by these social media companies, by these tech companies who make their money not off of advertising, for instance. They make the majority of their money off of selling our personal information to data brokers. It's part of the reason why there are infinite websites right now, so-called data brokers, that just sell our personal information, including where we live, what our phone number is, where we've worked. I don't really feel very free when I'm terrified about my own safety because there's a company that's literally making money off of selling my personal information.
Okay, I just have to stop it here. So she's basically saying because there's in capitalism, you've got a company that said, hey, you know what? There's some money to be made here. And when people come to these social media sites or they come to an internet provider, they come to whatever it is out there, a retail entity, and you join, everybody, look, we know that's what happens. You want to join a retail entity, you want to join something for a credit, you want to get a credit card, you want to buy a car, you want to buy a house, you want to get a mortgage like we were talking about. You want to, join Facebook or Twitter. Of course you sign up and nobody reads the fine print. We can't wait to get through the freaking fine print as we're getting carpal tunnel syndrome, okay? Scrolling down on the cursor, trying to get to the accept button so we can get through all the garbage that they're asking about. And yes, is it a problem? should it be against the law? Hey, that's a whole different another question to ask, whether or not they should be able to sell our information without them letting us know? But in the fine print that's there, we've given away that right. You want to change that? Legislate it. But to equate all of a sudden that, you know what, oh my goodness, you got these data collection companies coming up there. Hey, Anna, those data collection companies, they've got to have data entry workers, right, who are making money. Some are making a lot of money who are managers and above. Some are just at the entry level position making, entry level money and hoping to work their way up. You want to shut those people down? You want to stop them from working? I mean, somebody took that risk and said, somebody wants this information. Trust me, if nobody wants that information, they're going to stop, investing in data collection companies. I mean, that's just the way it is. So once again, it just goes to show you the difference between those people that believe that we're in a mix of capitalism and, a mixture of economy between some socialist aspects and some capitalist aspects, mostly capitalists here. And Anna basically going back and forth saying, so what? Okay, yeah, that data entry, that's a whole different area in terms of, right or wrong. Has nothing to do with workers or wages or anything like that, which is what this question was about. Capitalism versus socialism. Let's continue.
So there are certain incentives under capitalism that actually do infringe upon our civil liberties and our rights. So that's one thing that I want to note. But the other thing I want to note is, how free do you feel if you're on the precipice of financial ruin, if you can't afford paying for a medical emergency that you're experiencing? What do you do when you don't have health insurance, which tens of millions of Americans right now don't have because of the exorbitant prices associated with it? How free do you feel if you're a wage worker who has not experienced your real wages increase in literally decades? Wages have not kept up with inflation. So
that is not true. Under the Trump, under President Trump for his 4 years, those wages went up for the first time in decades. You know what? People were making, blacks were making much more money than before. Hispanics were making much more money before. Women were making much more money before. In fact, even teenagers at that time increased. Teenage, employment actually, rose. Hispanic employment rose. Black employment rose. Women, entering into the workforce, rose under the Trump administration. Energy prices, were down low. Wages were going up. I don't know what the heck Anna's talking about. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense at all, what she's saying.
How free do you feel when you want to leave your job, but you can't because your healthcare benefits are tied to that work or tied to that job? I mean, freedom, again, is an interesting way of framing it, because I would venture to say that there's a significant portion of the population in the United States, significant portion of workers in this country that do not, in fact, feel free, in fact, have experienced the precarious nature of a capitalistic system that forces them to work endlessly, if they're lucky, in a full-time job, if they're unlucky, in several part-time jobs that they cobble together with no benefits just to make ends meet.
First of all, nobody is forcing you to go to work, okay? To work endless hours. What is this, back in the 1900s? Forcing you to work? Cobbling up the hours part-time? Yes, if in the job that you're in, maybe it's because, it just depends upon what sector of the job market are you in. Is there room for advancement? Do you have the educational certificates or the educational experience, or just even the on-the-job experience to try to get to a position where you can increase your hourly wage, to get to a managerial position, or to have the experience that a company needs to get that higher wage, or to be promoted to a managership position or an assistant manager position, or those kind of things. And then Anna talks about in terms of where you can't move because of, that's just the way the law is right now. Again, fix the laws if you want to do that, okay? Have the ability to buy, insurance across state lines like we can do with other types of insurance. Have the ability to, to address it, that if you do move from one job, your insurance can move. I mean, these are policy questions that can be advocated for. But to say that this is because, this is why capitalism sucks and you have no freedom to do anything. You've got the freedom to move. Yes, sometimes you've got to be in that job until another position arises, or people do that all the time in a capitalist society. They're moving up and down. They're leaving jobs, gaining. Sometimes the next job they have to take, maybe there is a salary cut or a wage cut, but the opportunity might be better in the long run. People make those decisions. They have to make those decisions every single time that they decide on what it is that they want, how much they want to work, and how much time and like I said, employers tell you got to spend a certain amount of time there. We're going to give you a certain amount of money for spending that time. That's the way it is.
Yeah, let me give you 30 seconds because I want to move on something with that.
I'll just say I think that there's a bit of a definitional game that's very often played with the word freedom. Freedom obviously has two separate meanings. Isaiah Berlin talked extensively about the difference between positive liberty and negative liberty. What you're talking about are things that people need and things that people want, and that is not the same thing as liberty.
I'm talking about what people need. People need health care.
I don't disagree that people need health care, but to characterize that as a freedom is a very different thing. If the goal of the government is to provide you the opportunity to seek things, right, then that is not the same thing as the government providing those things to you directly. Nor is it the same thing as the government seizing that thing from one person and giving it to you here. To characterize it as freedom is a real mischaracterization. Again, I'm happy to discuss whether or not we should change the programming here, but I think that the sleight of hand that's played by equating freedom of speech, for example, or freedom from being murdered on the street, or freedom to dispose of your capital as you see fit, to characterize that in the same language that we'd use to discuss why you need a house, it's a difference in kind. It's apples and oranges.
Yeah. So let me just quickly
Okay, go ahead. I want to ask you a question.
And that's what Ben was talking about. Needs, wants, desires, and to equate a need as a constitutional right, as the progressives would like you to imagine, that housing is a human right. Having a car is a human right. Mode of transportation is a human right. Health insurance is a human right. I mean, these are the things that they said. There's nothing like that enshrined in the Constitution. Okay, and to have government, and he says, if you want to have that policy discussion, that's a whole different thing. But to do that would be to disincentivize people, disincentivize businesses or whatever, and would really cause a situation that you're seeing what's happening in Europe right now with the stagnation of their economies, because they have put so much money into the social net fabric of their country by taxing their citizens up the freaking wazoo. And listen, they tax us pretty damn heavily here in the United States as well.
Go ahead.
Because this idea of taking something from one person and giving it to the redistribution issue, which I think oftentimes is framed inaccurately.
Never.
When we talk about redistribution of wealth, I mean, look at the amount of money that gets invested by our federal government in the form of research and development, whether we're talking about pharmaceutical companies or even companies like Tesla. The seed money from Tesla did not come from private investors. In fact, the same year that Obama's administration invested in the failed Solyndra project, they also invested the same amount into Tesla. And guess what? Tesla ended up being a massive success. The only downside to it, though, is that now you have Elon Musk, who's whining and crying about having to pay his fair share of taxes when, during the pandemic, he became, for a brief period of time, the richest man literally in the world, right? So,
and just for clarification, when recently Elon Musk just ended up paying, taxes, it was the largest amount of taxes ever paid in the history by any entity, corporation, company, or individual. It was in the billions, multi-billions of dollars that he had to pay because I think those stocks certificates had matured or something like that in terms of the Tesla stock. And as far as Anna talking about the government investing in agencies, and look, I'm against subsidies or whatever, but that's just the way, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that the government spends its money on that I don't like. And we're on conservative, we're on the right. So there's a lot of things we don't like because it seems that they're spending it on ideas and policies that the left institutes. And there's a ton of things that if you ask progressives and leftists to say, they don't like it taking their tax dollars and spending on entities and policies or whatever that they feel are on the right or on the conservative side. So there's always going to be that battle. But there is this battle, and it is true that there is a redistribution of wealth that is going from the top, that is going to the bottom. And I'm not talking about the ones, the social safety net that everybody needs or that needs to be contributed to. We're talking about just a redistribution of wealth that is going to people and entities that has no absolute business going to at all. Anyways, let's continue.
I agree with you about subsidies, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Welcome to libertarianism.
So look, those investments need to be made. That research and development needs to take place because private investors are not willing to take the risks necessary. It's true.
That is fundamentally untrue.
The federal government's research and development is what led to the internet. I mean, it's a huge part of it.
The fact that the government is a grab bag of cash does mean that the government will eventually invest in some things that are worthwhile. It will also invest in an awful lot of enormous piles of crap,
Okay,
right? The fact is, if you don't bear the risk of the downside, you're going to make a lot of bad investments.
We got a few more questions, and I want to get through, and we've got...
Just want to end it here. Ben, in that closing statement, basically says that that's true. If anybody out there that started a small business or a business, whatever, you have to accumulate the money somehow. So either you earned it, maybe it was inherited, but the majority, you did something, you worked or you invested, you reaped the benefit of your work, reaped the benefit of your investment, you got that money together, you put some of your money, you go out, you seek a loan. If you need to, you get that loan. Now you're risking the money that you made, you're risking the money that you're going to loan for. Now you have an idea put forth together and you invest it out there in a business. If it goes well, great. You can take that formula and repeat it and continue to invest, continue in other business or the same business, continue to grow. But there's no safety net for you if it fails. If it fails, you lost the money that you put in. You lost the money from your loan, which you have to pay back, or you go into bankruptcy, or all the other things that can happen. But if you're the government and you have an endless supply of cash, it doesn't matter if you have a, billion or multi-billion-dollar boondoggle. Who cares? You're always going to be cutting in money. It doesn't matter. If not, you print it like they're doing. So there's absolutely no incentive for the government to basically take a look and really say, here's a project that's really going to work. Here's a project that has some concern. There's a lot of risk over here. Let's decide not to put our money over here. We're going to put the money on the side where the risk is less. But they don't do that. They just throw the money at everything. And of course, some things are going to work, but the majority aren't. Like it's a cylinder. We could go on and on and on with the amount of government fails. And like I said, government success is very, very, very few. Anyways, folks, thanks for watching this part of the debate between Ana and Ben. It was part 7. And you've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host. My name is Dr. Nasir. Like, share, and follow us. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell. And I'll leave you with my final and parting thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.